All right, Tom, we good to get started?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is JD O'Brien, and I'd like to welcome you all to episode 12 of Indiana Strength All Access. For those of you that are new to the show, what All Access is a platform for athletic performance coaches, sports coaches, veterans, you name it, to have a chance to present on a topic that is near and dear to them. And what makes this show fun, other than our awesome speakers, is kind of the format, keeping the presentation under 10 minutes. Today we have another incredible lineup of speakers. We have our very own Will Alley from Indiana Strength, Cam Rosano from University of Minnesota, and Brian Bingaman from Eastern University. And I'm ready and I'm excited for what these coaches have to talk about today. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Lainey with the introduction for our first speaker.
Thanks, JD. And as he said, we have our very own Mr. William Alley. And, I had a hard time actually figuring out where to start with his introduction because of the gravity of the impact that this man has, and seeing him firsthand every day with young athletes is just absolutely inspiring. And you talk about athletes running through walls for their coaches. I honestly believe that athletes would give their lives for this man, because it's like when he's around, almost everything stops. All eyes are on him and everyone's paying attention. He's the definition of living life of integrity and honor. I mean, that's Will in a nutshell. But on top of that, he doesn't leave a single stone unturned in terms of educating himself of what's out there. And I know we are all super, super fortunate to have him here at Indiana and are better people because of him. And with this topic today on his journey, I know that you all will see how special of a guy he is. And so I don't want to take up any more time, and I will send it over to Will.
Thank you, Lainey. I really appreciate those kind words. It means a lot to me. Although I think most of the reason they stare at me is because they try to figure out why my voice is so deep. But with that said, what I want to talk about today, and I'll kind of get to the point, I won't use PowerPoint or anything today, is, like Lainey said, just a little bit of my life's journey and just how that shaped my thought on myself making excuses, right? And even just others in the field. And I won't speak for everyone, I'll speak for myself. And maybe there are some that can kind of draw parallels to this, but a lot of times we find ourselves talking to other individuals, or let's say talking to athletes, and we've probably all been in this scenario where an athlete messes up and we get frustrated and we ask them, why did you do that? And you get in multiple scenarios. You get that one athlete that's just ran. Everything they're saying is just an excuse. And then you get two others that don't say anything. One, because they don't care, and the other because they would rather not disrespect you by making an excuse, right? Even if it does seem like a justified reason. And I found myself over the years just making excuses, whether it be outspoken and verbally or just internally, for not being able to do something or not pursuing something later on. I was that guy that all through grade school, and I've been to school in numerous countries now, it's like every single report card, somewhere on that report card from each teacher said, William has potential. And it got to the point where, like, by the time I was in high school, I was sick of the word potential because it always meant that I just didn't do well enough. And for me, that just, it struck me in the direction of, well, why aren't I? And so one of the things that I started to tell myself was that I was busy, right? And that was the first lie, right? The word busy, and I put it on a PowerPoint and I took it off, and I wrote it on a piece of paper, I took it off. And it's one of those ones, just like bowl. If you say it often enough or you read it often enough, it just looks weird. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't make any sense. But I was busy because I was trying to do everything that everybody was telling me I was supposed to do. I got to college, and some of you know, some of you don't, but my first major was accounting. And it was really, really quick after that first set of midterms that I realized I could do this. I kind of struggled on that midterm, but this is not something that I want to do. And so I changed directions, and as a result, I decided to just make myself really busy with all the other things that I thought I was supposed to be doing. So fast forward 4 years, myself and a roommate, we were writing a thesis. I would wake up 6 a.m., get my training in. I had to train separate from the weightlifting coach that I had at the time. And then I would work part-time as a personal trainer for a few hours. Fast forward to about 5 p.m., I would finish up what I had to be doing after coaching the men's basketball team, because I'm now their strength coach. And I drive 45 minutes to play for a farm league team that I was playing for at the time, just to practice, and then drive 45 minutes back, work on our thesis with my roommate. 10, 11 p.m. came by, and I'd do that all over again for about a whole year. And I took pride in that, much the same way that myself and I know some other coaches take pride in the fact that we're the workhorses, we're the grinders, we do all these things. But I wasn't necessarily getting anywhere. The strength conditioning job that I had, like, that job alone would have put me far, far below the poverty line, right? And I wasn't getting anywhere with my family. I had been isolating people. I'd been doing all these things, but all because I was just busy. And so I looked at just what we do as a profession and what we ask of our athletes. Like, we ask them to be athletes. We want them to be good. But then we always have these camps on what we want them to be good at. Right? For many of us, it's unacceptable for athletes to be really good at their sport, but they're now academically ineligible because they just wouldn't go to class. So we tell them to go to school. And then we have this other camp where it's like, you know what? I want them to be outstanding and upstanding citizens. I want them to be best men and women they can possibly be later in life. I want to be good fathers, good mothers, good wives and husbands. I want to be all of that. But then again, like, that doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't be good at what they want to do, their career, their lives, their jobs, those other things that are just kind of encompassing around that. And I thought of myself, like, if I look at my life as my life being the athlete, there's a whole lot of things. There's a whole lot of levels, there's a whole lot of layers to it. I'm a son. I'm a brother. Most recently, I'm a husband. And, like, there's all these other things that we can add on to that, but I also coach, right? And I say these things somewhat loosely because I don't think they are who I am. They're things that I do, or they are certain responsibilities that I have, or titles that have been thrust upon me. But that doesn't make any one of those things an excuse for me not to do the other well. If I'm trying really, really hard to reconnect with my family and be a really great husband or a really great brother to the siblings that I have, that doesn't mean that I let my job go by the wayside. It doesn't mean that some of the people that I work around and the relationships that I have the opportunity to build, that I stop trying to build those. And kind of going more specific to strength conditioning, if I'm trying to make sure that every man and woman, every boy and girl that I coach is just an outstanding, upstanding role model for their peers, and they can move through life being a great man or great woman, that doesn't give me a rite of passage not to get better as a coach so I can coach them where they're at now, right? Because that's the vessel that I've been given to have an impact on these individuals. So I've toyed with all these words and all these excuses, and again, played devil's advocate with myself for all these things because I've done them so many times, right? I've done them enough times to see that, you know what, I've got a different perspective. I've got, you know what, maybe different values now. Oh, you know what, maybe my priorities are different. As much as I agree with all those, I'll still say, and this is me being devil's advocate to myself, like, that doesn't give me an excuse. If my priority now is family, it doesn't give me an excuse to say, you know what, I'm not going to read this, I'm not going to get better at my craft, and because that's not what's important at the end of the day. And on the flip side, like, I'm a nerd with the rest of them, and as much as I dive into VBT and all sorts of training protocols and reading books and things like that, that doesn't give me an excuse to not have date night on Fridays or Saturdays, or to do any of those other things that I know that I should be doing as an individual in a relationship. All these for me were used as excuses where they could have been used as tools, or they could have been used as a catalyst for something bigger. So one of the things I've tried to chase more recently is to have an impact. And then that further just blossomed into me wanting to have a multifaceted impact. A number of you on this show, a number of you watching, a number of you that we work with have all probably received an invitation to a wedding from a former athlete, or a text or a phone call about how much you meant to them and things like that. And those things for me are just little medals, little trophies and whatnot. They're not the big picture at the end of the day. What the big picture for me is some of those individuals whose weddings I get invited to that end up being the best wives, the best husbands, the best fathers, and healthy, because they learned some tools from what I did as a coach. Some of those individuals that go on to be strength coaches, they go on to be really great strength coaches that are great fathers, mothers, husbands. It's all these things that you can put into this one vessel of it, which is our human body. So at the end of the day, I try to take a deeper look inside, and I ask everybody else too, is what are those things that you're focusing on, or maybe it's your priority, maybe it's your value, and then keep valuing those things. But what is it that you're putting on the back burner or using that as an excuse to not excel at or get better at? Those are things that I think about on a regular basis. And at the end of the day, it means that I've got to work on a whole lot of different things, and I could be seen as busy. If COVID has taught me nothing, it's that we've got time to do the things that we want to do. So let's take our time, let's do our sets and reps, let's get this thing done, because at the end of the day, it's pretty simple to do. That's all I have for today. If you guys want to talk to me more about any of this sort of stuff, that's my name. That's some of the ways that you can contact me. Some of you guys do have my number. If you don't, just email me and we can get to chatting from there. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Will, awesome. The people here on staff and just on this call, that you have definitely made an impact on me and many, many others. So I appreciate it. And I've learned from when I first started as an intern that when you speak, I need to shut up and listen. So great talk, great presentation. So moving on, our next speaker I have the pleasure of introducing is Cam Rosano. So I've known Cam since he was at IU as a football player, and then as an intern with us in the weight room. And I've had the pleasure of kind of watching him grow, not only in his career, but just in his passion, I think, with the field of strength and conditioning. So from when he left IU to go on to Stanford to where he is now in Minnesota, I can just distinctly remember conversations that we have at conferences where I can just see him year in and year out taking a step further in his career and in his knowledge. So I know that he is a much better coach than when he left Indiana, and he was a darn good one when he was there. So without further ado, Cam, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. Let me share my screen. This one. And then, okay. So this is a concept, phasing plyometrics, the when, the where, and the why. So first and foremost, shout out to Brandon Wickett and Nate Wells. These two, it was really Wickett's idea from the get-go. Came to me with the concept, and Nate, the three of us, we fleshed out the ideas, the theories, concepts, everything, kind of came up with some of the details. So a little bit of the background, periodization. I use mainly block periodization for the phase potentiation benefits of it. I use block periodization because that's really what my population of athletes allow me to use. And so if you're not familiar with this triangle over here, Anatoly Bondarchuk uses it in his book, Transfer of Training. And the idea is that each one of these, you work backwards from the event, right? So each one of these foundational layers builds upon and potentiates for the one above it, right? So that leads into the programming, ABP, always be potentiating, right? Whether that's the exercise, whether that's the phase, you know, just find a way to get the most out of it. With the ultimate goal, again, is that being of transferring to the actual sport. And to me, that's more force than 250 milliseconds. So this is it, right? Same view, different lens, right? I want to talk about like the nervous system and how it relates to exercise and or plyometrics and how you can blend the two. So same view, different lens. Eccentrics and isos have unique strategies through which the nervous system can control them, right? So eccentrics are associated with cortical drive. And what that means is due to the nature of the eccentric contraction, you don't get the reflex loop from the spinal cord. So the signal comes from the brain down to the muscle, right? So your cortex has to work that much harder to get the muscle to work. So Delvecchio et al. In 2019 published a paper that said that the cortical drive to the muscle is one of the main determinants in an individual's rate of force development capabilities, right? So to me, it's really just the foundation of your nervous system, right? And so taking it a step further, when you add in isometrics, you get that reflex loop back from the spinal cord. So now you've got your brain and your spinal cord working together, faster signal, stronger, more of them. It leads to increased muscle activation, faster cross-bridge cycling, and rate coding. But the key thing for now is remembering cortical drive. So then plyometrics, right? This is all just background stuff. Shock plyometrics, there's 3 components to them: CNS stimulation, myotatic reflex, and the elastic recoil. Okay, so then CNS stimulation is made of the magnitude of the movement, right? How big it is, how difficult it is, really difficulty being the big word there. That's made up of the sharp onset of tension and the rapid stretch. Okay, now myotatic reflex is your fusomotor system, which is the system through which your CNS controls and modifies the sensitivity of your muscle spindles. So if you do a depth drop, for instance, the sharp onset of tension and the rapid stretch, what you're doing is you're sensitizing the muscle spindles to the stretch, so that way they react to it quicker, okay? And with that, you see an increase in cortical drive to the muscle, okay? So you can see how the two are related. And now the third and last one is the elastic recoil. That's your typical tendons, load and explode type stuff. Over here on the right is your ground contact times and distinction. So you can distinguish between different plyometrics. You've got your slow ones, your moderate, and your fast, and it's just based off of your ground contact time right there. So then this is where it gets, the vernacular changes a little bit. So this is from a guy, DB Hammer. He kind of mapped out, if you will, a central nervous system, the way that somebody operates, right? Because you've probably seen where one athlete hits a heavy load and they smoke it, but you go up a little bit and they get crushed, versus the other athlete who can grind through them, right? So he talked about 3 different systems, and basically what they relate to is, in layman's terms, it's just your strength phase, your power phase, and your speed phase. So neural rate, neural magnitude, and neural duration, right? That's just speed, power, and strength. And over here is the graphical representation of it, where the green little humps right here are the neural rate, the red one is duration, and then the coup de grace, if you will, the yellow is your neural magnitude. So just remember those when talking about this slide. So this is it, right? Matching the methods, the goal of the weights has to equal the goal of the plyometrics. It's a continuum, right? So high magnitude, so a lot of CNS stimulation, sensitizing the muscle spindles, and low rate, where there's a low or a very slow rather ground contact time with your neuro duration or your quote unquote strength work. So if I do block periodization and I'm in an eccentric phase, then what I'll do is, with the plyometrics, I'm worried about the plyometric portion of it. And it's vernacular for just the eccentric component, right? So you land, you hit the ground, and that's your plyometric contraction. So what I'll do is load that up. I'm not worried about the actual stretch shortening cycle. I'm not worried about the I'm not worried about the reversible muscle action. I'm just worried about them carrying a load, sharp onset of tension, and rapid stretch in the muscle, and them landing stiff and doing the best job that they can to not let that weight pull them down any further when they hit the ground, right? So then between the eccentric contractions in that phase with the main exercise and the plyos, you're sensitizing the muscle spindles and you're getting a huge cortical drive to the muscles that are working. Then, because it's still in the strength phase, if I move on to an iso block, I remove that. Now I am worried about the reversible muscle action. So I lower the weight or increase the height of the box, what have you. So that way now we get the elastic recoil from the tendons, so on and so forth. So it builds upon what you worked on in the first phase. And then another variation that you can use is if you don't do any of that, if you don't want to use external load or depth drops, then you just have them do the plyos from the bottom position. You land deep, disadvantageous position, longer ground contact times, more stretch in the muscle, higher tension. Okay, so then moving from your strength work to your power work, you do moderate magnitude, moderate rate. So it's a little less stimulating to the CNS, but it's faster ground contact time. So now you're shifting away from the volitional efforts of your muscle to more involuntary efforts through your tendons, right? And as it says, just adjust the load and the height, right? And the next slide's got a couple examples that we'll talk through. But the biggest thing that I like to do in this one is you add band tension to it. So the band accentuates the eccentric, but then you jump through the band as well. So you got a little accommodating resistance there. Or again, if you don't want to use any external loading, you can just do it from the mid position so they don't land as deep, so you get faster ground contact times. And then the last one, high rate with your speed or your peaking stuff, accentuated eccentrics with weight release, body weight, and or high position. And then this over here, ignore the DFM, MFM, RFM. But this is, the way that I look at that is it's your block periodization for your nervous system. It's peaking, power, strength. And as with block periodization, right, you're trying to manipulate the variable so that way your athlete or you adapt to one specific variable, right? And the same goes with your nervous system. But as with block periodization, you can do two separate ones, but you want them to be pretty similar, right? So that way you don't pull it in opposite directions. Same thing here, right? So it's saying that you can use your strength work and your power work together and still get a great adaptation from it. Same thing that you can use from your power and your speed work, you can do. But what you don't want to do is hit your, you know, strength compound movement and then go over and do low magnitude, high rate plyometrics. They're too dissimilar. So then examples, right? So the eccentric, iso, power, and peaking. This was just, I just wrote this up. You would do, if I do a French contrast, weighted drop jump, 55 to 60% body weight, somewhere up there, right? Again, I'm not really looking for the ground contact time. I'm more so looking for a heavy load that they can do safely that's going to challenge them to land stiff and stick it and not let it pull them down any farther. Then an 18-inch plio depth drop with 25 to 30% body weight. They just step off the box, land stiff, and hold it. They don't have to jump afterwards. And then an accelerated band pause jump, same concept. Attack the ground on the way down, pause, and then you can jump afterwards. And then moving to the iso phase, lower the weight, but now you have the reversible muscle action. You remove any and or all pauses that you were doing before. But again, you're still trying to manipulate the ground contact times accordingly. And then when you get to like your power phase, you'll see band hex drop jump. So there's no weight on the hex bar, but you've got it banded. So that way you're jumping into the band resistance. And then you can adjust the depth drop heights based off of the individual. Verkhoshansky talks about 30 inches being the best for reactivity and explosive strength. But when I did it for me, I was better at 24 inches. So that's where it can get a little personalized. And then your neural rate, your peaking stuff, most all of it would be done with like a weight release. So with the band drop jump, it would just be holding the band in your hands. It pulls you down, let go, you explode up. And then 12 to 24 inch weighted depth drop the dumbbells at the bottom, explode up, load and explode, and then accelerated band pogos, all high rate, low magnitude work. And then this one's just for fun. It's in Paisley Park. If you've ever been there, rule number 1 of the Madhouse, take what you do seriously, but never take yourself too seriously. It's all about big fun. And here you go, some contact info. If you want to reach out to me, have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And that's all I got.
Well, Cam, you got my head spinning, my man. That's a I'm gonna give you a big round of applause. Great presentation, and that's awesome. We'll change gears a little bit here and I have the privilege to introduce our next speaker, Coach Brian Bingman. Coach Bing, as we refer to him as, is the Associate Athletic Director at Eastern University in Philadelphia. And the truth is, I'd love to be able to talk about kind of all his awards that he's won, his football career and everything else. But I think giving a quick story sums up the character of what Brian Bingman is. So Bing and I have known each other for about 20 plus years. And a few years ago, I personally have gone through some major adversity in my life and had some ups and downs. And Bing, I don't even know if you know this, but one of the times that I was really down, I ended up being on the phone with Bing. And He said, I'm going to come out and visit. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. When? And he's like, oh, I'll get there. Well, sure enough, the next day or the day after that, there's Bing at the house from Philadelphia. We had dinner, had shared some moment, talked about the good old days. And at the end of that dinner, he looked at me and he just said, listen, I just want you to know that if you need anything, he's like, I got you. He's like, anything you need, I'm here for you. He's like, but now I got to go home. And I'm like, you're going home. And so he did. He drove 14 hours back. And that story is so precious because he did a 28-hour road trip to go and have a 2.5-hour dinner with me, because of where I was at. And that guy, it's an honor to have you on the show, Bing, but it's even more of an honor to call you a friend. So I thank you for that. I love you as a brother and cannot wait to hear your speech. It's all yours, my man.
All right. Well, thanks. And to be fair, I stopped at the Pro Football Hall of Fame on the way home from visiting you. So it really wasn't all about you. So, first off, thanks for having me here. The first two speakers, you guys hit home runs. So I'm super nervous to deliver something to you. But this whole pandemic that we're in really changes perspectives, changes gears, just really changes how you think about everything. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how it's kind of affected me and things that I've gone through. So for the last 18 years, I was a Division I strength and conditioning coach. That's what I've done, built myself up. I was at my last job for 10 years. I was the first coach, created the program. It was my baby, the whole thing. And I've always tried to play it safe. I've had some opportunities to go to bigger schools, but I've always kind of liked where I was in Philly. It's kind of close to home for me. I've really tried to be as safe as I possibly could. The 3 jobs I have, including the one I have now, are all about 3 miles from each other. So, I really have never left this area since I moved here. But fast forward, I got this, great job opportunity here. Things change, perspectives change, and I got the ability to be an athletic director. So I jumped at the chance. And then as soon as I put my 2 weeks notice in, coronavirus hit, and I never stepped foot on campus. My first day of work was the 16th. Pennsylvania shut down. So I really just got back to work maybe like 2 weeks ago. And, that was hard. That was really, really hard. And then in the midst of this as well, we also decided to sell our house. So changed jobs. We're homeless because we sold our house. We couldn't find a house. It was a challenging time. And, when you go through that time, and it kind of forces you to really reflect on some things. And when I was trying to prepare this speech, I kind of told Tom what I was thinking, and he said, just give a couple of big take homes that you got through this process. And that's what I really want to talk about. So first off, my big things is I've always tried to play it safe. I always try to control my own narrative. And I've just realized that is impossible. I think we all realize that that's impossible. You can't do it. All right. You can't predict the future. You can't stay safe can't stay safe forever, but you can be prepared if there's a worst case scenario. And that's what I've tried to do during this whole time. Things you don't think about when you're a younger strength coach is, what you're going to do financially, how you're going to handle things. And if you haven't, and you're a young coach, you need to get to a financial advisor and start working on that stuff now, because you don't want to be in a situation where, especially at my level where I'm at Division III, a lot of the coaches in my conference have been furloughed and lost their jobs, and they have it's not like you have a coaching change. And, I've survived for coaching changes. This you can't really prepare yourself for. So, these are things that you kind of need to really be thinking about with your different revenue streams and things like that. I know that I've revisited that. Luckily, we're going to be in a situation where we should be okay. But again, it's scary, and you really can't plan for any of these things, because what's going to happen is going to happen. Another thing, we all have great connections at work, right? We have connections through the athletes. That's the one thing that I miss the most. We have connections through our coaches. But I really recommend, if you can, and I'm sure everybody does, but you need to really create a support system outside of the university or wherever you work. For me, for example, changing gears midway and leaving jobs, I was there for 10 years. So people that I was good friends with, they were my family, they were my support system. My athletes, they were my support system. Those are the people that I talked to. when this pandemic hit, that all got erased. I got text messages here and there from our athletes, from our lacrosse guys, asking a couple of things, but coaches and people that I talk to every single day, I just really didn't talk to. I just didn't have them anymore. And then starting a new job, as great as everybody's been here in this university, and I'm thankful for everyone that's here. It's just different. It's just not the same because you don't have those personal connections. So for me, getting outside of that and reconnecting with my family, reconnecting with some of my friends, reconnecting with people that I worked with in the past was really important, especially from a mental health standpoint, because he helped me get through a lot of those times that, again, you're trying to play it safe and the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. I guess the other one is changing gears midstream like this, a lot of my identity was drawn from being a strength coach, right? From working at the university I worked at, from having that name on my chest, and that's kind of gone now. And now I'm at a smaller school that honestly probably none of you have ever heard. And at the end of the day, me changing gears and going from Division I to Division III isn't going to define who I am as a coach or the job that I'm going to do. And I think people need to realize that too, especially younger coaches. I got off the phone with some kids today about wanting to intern that have jobs, working at high schools, and all they want to do is get to that big Division I school. And some of them, I'm just like, what is wrong? Why would you do that? You have a great job. You're impacting athletes like Will talked about earlier. It's really not about getting to that pinnacle. It's great to say that you work at a big school, but it's really not what's going to define you. And I think as you get older, you actually start to realize that a little bit more. It's something that I definitely didn't understand until the last couple of years. And again, and Will alluded to this too, your priorities are going to change. For me, it was always about being the hardest worker in the room, spending 12 hours at the facility, staying until everybody's done. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I have a wife and 2 kids that during this time of being home and getting to reconnect with them, it's probably been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old. I get to eat breakfast with them every day. Those are the things that I think, in athletics, you kind of forget about because you're so ingrained into day-to-day of the being busy, right? I got to get up. I got to be at the facility. I would be guilty because I take my kids to school in the morning. I would be guilty that I'm not there for that 6 o'clock group, that 7 o'clock group, but I'm still staying to get all my work done. And, I'm not letting it fall on my staff, but I'd still feel guilty about that stuff. Having this reset, having almost these priorities shift during this time, during the COVID stuff and the quarantine, really changed my perspective on things and what's truly important to me. And not that my athletes aren't important, not that my coaches aren't important, not that my job's not important, but they're also not going to be more important than my family. And that's something that I've really, it's taken me a long time to get to. Maybe that's being a little bit older, having a little bit of hindsight, but that's just for me. And then kind of lastly, it's weird. Again, you talk about being safe and your perspective change and you can't control certain things. But at the end of the day, you have to have a little bit of faith that things are going to work out the right way. I'm not saying that you have to be a religious person, but you also have to have a little bit of faith and a little bit of spirituality to help with your mental health and put your hands in something a little bit greater than you. Because at the end of the day, we can prepare, right? So we all talked about this even before we got on the air. We're doing all this coronavirus testing, we're planning, we're doing all types of things. But at the end of the day, we have no control over that situation. And, it took me the first probably 2 or 3 months of, what happens if the university isn't open? What happens if this doesn't happen? What if happens with this? And it really got me depressed. But being here and having a little bit of faith in something bigger than me, that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out, has really helped out. And it's something that I try to get through my head every single day, that it is going to work out. Things are going to happen for a reason. What you want, you might not get, but there's a reason why you're not going to get it. And it's going to, maybe you're getting protected from something that's going to happen to you down the road, if that makes sense. So again, as a young coach, me at 24, I wouldn't have believed that. I'm just going to go and grind that thing out. I can control every variable, but it's just not the way it works. And I think that once you kind of get to that point, you can kind of have a little faith that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to. It takes some of the pressure off your shoulders. It's not going to take all off your shoulders, but you know, it's going to kind of help you get through that day to day and, you know, maybe ease some of your anxiety. You know, again, I'd like to thank everyone for letting me talk here. I was going to set a timer. I have no idea if I went 10 minutes or I went below. I feel like I'm in a public speaking class in college. I didn't want to go long, but you know, if anyone needs to reach me, I wasn't fancy like everyone. You can just reach me at CoachBing53 on Instagram.com. I don't really put up a lot of content. It's mostly pictures of my kids, but they're two good looking kids. So if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to. But Tom,
Bing,
thanks for having me on here.
What's your other Instagram?
Oh, Iron Eagles at SNC.com or Iron Eagles SNC, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead and give them a follow. Well, gentlemen, thank you today. Great talk, Bing. I think it's pretty cool. I was just realizing at Bing when you were talking that everybody that talked today and a lot of people that are on this call are all kind of under the same tree, whether we know each other or not. Because like you and Tom started under JT, and then Laney GA'd under you, and Will GA'd under Tom, and then Cam GA'd under Will, and it just keeps on going down the line, and you get to see all the X's and O's and the smarts and the feels and the philosophical things that go through our minds every day. And it's an amazing environment in which we've created, and keep going and just keep that in mind as keep building this tree, because it's y'all are cool people to hang out with. I'll say that. But we, you know, to everybody else, we created this platform just to further the education and collaboration with young coaches, as well as others in the field. So with that, I thank you for joining us today. We will be off next week. We are planning a special presentation next Wednesday through other collaborations we've been doing with other folks at other schools. So be on the lookout for that. Stay tuned into our Instagram. We're changing up our website and our platform and how we present all of this stuff to you guys and how you can access it. So just stay in tune with our Instagram page and we'll have all the details on that. But besides that, thank you again, and stay safe out there.